Good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining us at Wichita City Hall. Joining me this morning is Vice Mayor J.B. Johnston and the council members for the City of Wichita, including Becky Tuttle, Maggie Ballard, Dalton Glasscock, Mike Hoheisel, and Brandon Johnson. First and foremost, I want to address that our hearts are heavy. Our hearts are heavy as a city. Our hearts are heavy as a city council. And we are here to provide the support needed for our community and all who have been affected. We are still learning minute by minute additional details about this tragedy, and we will share those details and confirmed information when we receive that. I want to first thank also the first responders in Washington, D.C., who have worked tirelessly throughout the night. And at this time, we have been told that there are no survivors. We mourn with all those who have been impacted. This is a terrible tragedy that will unite those in Washington, D.C. and Wichita, Kansas forever. As we know, an American Airlines jet carrying 64 people plunged into the Potomac River after colliding in midair with an Army helicopter on Wednesday night. We're hearing recovery teams in Washington, D.C. had pulled more than 24 bodies from the icy waters. We do not know yet final confirmation on all of the individuals who were on that flight. And of course, we will share that information, but not before families have been first contacted. Congressman Ron Estes is here with us this morning, and I would like to invite him to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Mayor Wu, and thank you for all of the city council members for holding this press conference to help share this information. This is such a tragic day for our community. So many of us will be touched by people that we know directly or indirectly that were victims of this tragic tragedy that happened. You know, overnight I was in contact with the White House Situation Room, getting updates as they were going through the process. I spoke last night with the chairwoman of the National Transportation Safety Board as well. And at that point in time, their investigation was they were getting prepared for that, but they were waiting for the search and rescue efforts to conclude before that they started that investigation. So I know this is going to be a tragedy that touches our community. We have such a steep history of being involved in aviation, and being a close-knit community like we are, it's going to have consequences for years to come. I do want to make a general comment about air safety in general. I mean, we have the safest skies in any country in the world. And when a tragic incident like this happens, obviously we want to do the investigation, which will take days and weeks to go through that process, and to make sure that we can prevent accidents like this from happening in the future. And so I appreciate all of the updates we'll have this morning. I know there'll be more coming out, both from here in Wichita as well as in DC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Congressman. We also have a representative for Senator Jerry Moran, who will share a statement as well.
Mayor, thank you. I'm Mike Zammerslow with United States Senator Jerry Moran's office. The senator asked me to share the following statement on his behalf. Wichita is located in the heart of our nation, and today we are grieving. I received confirmation this morning that no one survived the crash of American Airlines Flight 5342. This is a sad day for Kansans and our nation as we awaken this morning to this tragic news. My heart grieves for the lives that were lost and their loved ones who are now learning that their friend or family member was among those who perished. There will be much to learn and to do in the coming days in the wake of this tragedy. But today, please join me in praying for Kansas. May God comfort those who are mourning. Mayor, thank you.
I would like to now ask our Airports Director, Jesse Romo, to provide some updates. And again, a lot of the details are still waiting for confirmation. And so we ask that Jesse give us the latest that we have confirmed.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. Jesse Romo, Director of Airports, Wichita Airport Authority. I don't have a lot of official information to share. We will get that directly from NTSB. American Airlines will be providing the official updates and information. They do have a newsroom that you can go to online. The website is aa.com/newsroom. There's also an 800 number to utilize for the friends and family members of the people aboard the flight, 1-800-679-8215. I will say that airport staff did activate our family incident support team last night. And so if family members did show up to the terminal to have additional information, even for support, we were there with them with our team of volunteers, along with other airline staff and representatives. The airport remains open. There is air traffic continuing. Right now, we do have fog, so I would ask everybody to please drive safe as you're headed to the airport or traveling today, and keep up with your airline for additional information. And right now, that's all I have.
I would like to say that Director Jesse Romo, City Manager Bob Layton, and several council members were at the airport last night as the care team got activated. I also learned from American Airlines this morning that additional care team members have come to Wichita and will be providing support for families as well as crew members. I am in direct contact with American Airlines to find out the confirmed information to provide to all of you. But I want to reiterate that any information should go to their hotline, especially for families. And that number that Jesse said already, but I will remind everyone to use again, is 1-800-679-8215. In addition, this afternoon at high noon, the Wichita City Council, in contact with the Greater Wichita Ministerial League and multiple faith leaders in Wichita, will be coming together for a community-wide prayer. And we ask that anyone who would like to join us to come to City Hall here in downtown Wichita for that community prayer. All are welcome. At this time, our community needs to come together to support the family members who have been impacted, to come together in honor of those individuals on that flight. And as a council, we will lead in bringing this community together to pray for our community, but also move our community to know that there are resources. And as a city, we will have additional resources, especially for staff who have been impacted. And I am again grieving with everyone in our community and those in Washington, D.C. due to this very tragic incident that happened. We will take a few questions at this time.
Do you know how many of the passengers are Wichita residents versus traveling back home to D.C. or somewhere else?
At this time, we don't have that information, and I know that we don't have the manifest at this moment.
Have you spoken with any family or friends of members or people?
The care team was activated last night, and one family was there. And I want to say thank you to our local media partners who were respectful here in Wichita. That says a lot about our community. The care team was there to provide comfort for that family, and the council members were also there to provide comfort for them. But at this time, that is all we have in regards to family members.
Do you know how many families did show up last night?
Only one.
Was everything normal at the beginning of this flight taking off from Wichita?
Say that again.
Was the flight normal taking off?
I will have Jesse.
Yes, to our knowledge, everything occurred as normal, so there was no abnormality to the operation.
Will this flight continue as normal tonight? Or is this flight on hold? Any changes at all?
I know Reagan National was shut down for a while. They have plans to reopen the airport, and I haven't heard yet when exactly they're going to open, and I haven't heard specifically for this flight. But if we do have additional information, that will come from American as well. And so if folks are looking to fly on that route, just need to continue to check with American Airlines.
Jesse, how many seats were on the plane on the 700? Was that 75, or do you know what it was configured to?
Yeah, well, good word. The configuration depends, for each aircraft, but it is approximately about 75 seats normally. And I would have to get specifics on that aircraft, but I don't have that at this time.
Has there been any contact with Bombardier, especially with this being an airplane?
No. No.
Do you know where they are in the process of contacting the families?
No, we do not. And, most of this incident occurred at DC and is being managed by the local partners and federal agencies that are responding in the DC area. But as was asked earlier, the manifest will be managed by American Airlines, and that information will be disseminated through their official sources as well as NTSB.
I know you said the flight was operating just fine. Was it delayed or was it delayed?
I don't believe so. I don't have that information, but I can look into that.
Can you tell us anything about figure skaters, obviously, that were on the flight? We just hosted the U.S. National Championships on social media. A lot of figure skaters coming out, just hoping for the best. Anything?
I understand that some of that information is out there on social media or through other media outlets, but it's not information that we can share at this time.
Mayor, can you talk about, we've heard from a few folks about how big this last weekend was with the U.S. Figure Skating Championship being held here in Wichita, and all of these young Olympic hopefuls, which would have raised our living room in the future. Can you talk about just how big of an event this past weekend was and what it meant for the city to have these young skaters here in town?
It was truly an honor to have future Olympians and those who are at the highest competition level of figure skating right here in the Air Capital. We were so excited to have the opportunity to host the national championship. And even yesterday, I had folks tell me how wonderful these last few days have been with additional individuals that came into our community, whether to watch or to participate. So our community was really excited and thankful that everything went well with the championship. And so right now, we're just waiting for more information from U.S. Figure Skating that we can release. But right now, we're just hoping and praying again.
How do family and friends of folks on the plane get in touch with you all? I know there's a phone number for American, but if they want to connect with the local care team and they don't want to go to the airport, how do they do that?
They can reach out to the airport administration building.
Your phone number?
I'm going to look that up because all of a sudden sleep deprivation kicked in and my mind went blank on the phone number, but let me respond back to you in just a second.
Should affected families be coming to the airport, or are you urging them to stay at home? What should they do?
Everyone responds to a tragic incident a little differently, and so if they do feel that they would be more comfortable in the terminal or coming out there to the airport, we're ready to help support them in any way we can. but there isn't any more information that we can share that they're already being shared with directly by the airline. And so they may want to stay at home as well.
Jesse, would you mind repeating this into the microphone? That number that they will call is 316
316-946.
4700.
4700 is the Airport Administration Building.
Have any in Kansas State leaders been in contact with the U.S. Army about the helicopter? Can you speak about that a little bit?
Not about the helicopter. I have been in contact with several of our federal legislators who, again, are sending their condolences, but this was very early. That was yesterday or last night. In regards to any additional investigation, I don't have any.
Last evening, Senator Moran was in contact with the U.S. Department of Defense officials regarding your question, but also NTSB leadership, the CEO of American Airlines, and U.S. Department of Transportation leadership as well.
How closely will you all, Representative Estes and Senator Moran, work with the NTSB and the FAA to kind of stay abreast of getting to the bottom of what happened?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of information to gather around this process in terms of the flight plans and the incidents, what's happened, as well as what they discover through the recovery efforts. It's going to take some time, I know, for NTSB and the investigation team to go through that process, and so there'll be probably some slow release of information as they discover it and work through that. I know that's frustrating for all of us to actually wait and not have the answers at our fingertips. Obviously, we're reaching out from our office, and both of the senators were in D.C. at the press conference last night, working through that as well. As I mentioned, I spoke last night with the chairwoman of the National Transportation Safety Board, and so she's got a team there at DCA and working together that information. So we'll keep in constant contact as we try to go through that.
Congressman, I assume you've been on this flight several times in the last year. Does it give you pause in terms of the amount of traffic? I know there's a lot of talk this morning about the amount of air traffic around Reagan National. Does this give you pause about that situation and how that's managed right now?
No, this particular flight's been in process for over a year, in use for over a year now. Obviously, it's important for us as a community to have connections, have a direct flight, particularly one of the most commonly routes that's traveled to in Washington, D.C. Obviously, with the Reagan Airport situated there on the river right across from Washington, D.C., there are some twists and turns that pilots and planes have to make as they're coming in and out of that airport. So it does require skill of the pilot to work through that. I don't have any hesitation. I know the major runway there at Washington Reagan is I think it's the busiest in the country for any one runway. The flight last night was on the secondary runway through that process, which is a little bit shorter, which is more appropriate for a plane the size of the CRJ that was flying in there. So it's there's always going to be that process as whether they're coming from the south, as it was last night, or on the approach from the north. But I wouldn't hesitate to continue to fly in and out of Washington Reagan Airport, and including on this particular flight and with this particular plane.
The President said more information on how many people on the flight were from Wichita, how many were figure skaters.
And that's one of the frustrating things, I think, as we try to gather all this information. Obviously, there's a lot of concern about how families are going to grieve and find out, in some cases, find out the information. I know a lot of us in the community, myself and others, have been reached out by lots of friends around finding out whether we were on the plane or whether we knew of people that were on the plane through that process. I do know there's a time where we need to make sure that the families get the opportunity to be notified and the next of kin being allowed to know and being able to go through that process. before we make that information public. Even though I'd like to be able to know that and know some of those answers to some of those questions, like how many people were from Wichita, how many people were from the Washington, D.C. area. It just unfortunately takes a little bit of time to gather all of that and make sure that the process is followed.
And who's in charge of notifying families?
As far as the notification, this morning, the Secretary of Transportation Duffy in the press conference in Washington, D.C. said that a lot of that notification is going to transition to NTSB and FAA, as well as working with American Airlines and going through that process.
Congressman, you talked about how air travel is so safe. What would you say to people who will pause taking flights right now?
Yeah, I think when you look at overall track record in terms of how safe within the United States air traffic is, I think it's been 16 plus years since there's been a commercial airplane incident in the country, and you could obviously look at the number of miles, the number of passengers flown versus other modes of transportation. I still feel confident that we have strong safety measures in our air traffic system, and obviously we want to make sure that if there are any areas that need to be improved, we work on those, and if there's something to be learned out of this lesson in terms of something that happened in this particular instance, that we'll take that lesson and move forward. Thank you.
The Federal Transportation Secretary called the incident absolutely preventable. Do you agree with that?
I'm sorry, you said what?
The Federal Transportation Secretary, Sean Upton, called the incident preventable this morning. Do you agree with that assessment?
I believe he has some more information than I do in terms of some of those details. Obviously, when we look at what we've been able to see so far, we've kind of conceded some of the flight path of the Flight 5342, as well as the flight path of the helicopter. What I haven't heard yet is all of the traffic between the air traffic control system and both the helicopter as well as the airplane. He may have access to some information that I don't have. Obviously, we want to make sure that there aren't incidents like this ever in the country. So we want to make sure that we put in procedures that work to make sure that we do prevent that.
Thank you again, Congressman. On behalf of the Wichita City Council again, it was just a year ago that we started this flight. I was actually there alongside Councilmember Glasscock and Councilmember Johnson. It was January 8th, 2024. The first flight included Congressman Estes and Senator Moran, who took that first flight from Wichita to Washington, D.C. We were very honored to have gotten that flight and continue to advocate for those nonstop flights out of our community. So again, this is a true tragedy, and one that this council and myself want all of our community members to know that our hearts are heavy. They're also grieving, and we will provide the support that we can to those who have been affected. I want to say thank you, though, to several people who showed up last night and prayed over this council and those who are grieving. Pastor Bob Beckler, Pastor Ben Staley, and Rabbi Greenberg, who also showed up last night. I also want to thank the care team that is continuing to be at the airport, there for families affected, as well as crew members affected and staff members affected. And I want to say thank you to City Manager Layton and his staff for gathering us all this morning and allowing us to also have a community-wide prayer in the council chambers here at City Hall at noon. Again, we will continue to keep the community updated as we have confirmed information. And we invite all of you to come to the community-wide prayer, and we welcome anyone to join us. Tragedies like this remind us that we are one community. Whether a Wichitan, a Kansan, or an American, we are one community. And in times of struggle, we do come together in grief and sadness to lift one another. Wichita is stronger because we are together. Once again, we offer our deepest condolences to all the individuals whose lives were lost and to the families who are grieving. Thank you.
With the dads. And I can say when this story started to break and the news of this came out last night, it was a long night for us all, just trying to get accurate information. Who was on the plane, who wasn't on the plane, where are the dads, are there any survivors, that sort of thing.
We've seen some people, presumably skaters, show up this morning. How are other people who belong to the club processing this information?
I think a lot are trying to process it. Some of our older members have written me referencing the 1961 plane crash because that's clearly a reference point for them, having lived through it. I think our current members, leaders, management team, I don't know what the word is. Is it wrecked? Is it devastated? Folks are just stunned by this. My phone is just blowing up with emails and texts of folks, offering to support in any way they can, expressing condolences, and just how stunned they are by it.
Could you tell us what's next for the club immediately? Like, are you guys going to be open this week? What are the next steps here?
That's a good question. Haven't thought that far. I would assume we will be open just because skaters are resilient and they want to skate. I think also they come to the club and will come to the club as an opportunity to come together and to grieve together. There's never, ever a good time for a tragedy like this, but we're a small organization. We have a large facility. We're also the local host for the World Championships coming up at the end of March. So we're pretty busy, and we can't take a break. We need to keep moving.
How did you rebuild after the last crash, and how do you see yourselves rebuilding after this?
You rebuild over time. It's too soon to say, but obviously we have a hole in our coaching staff, a giant hole left by Vadim and Jenya. I'm not quite sure how we're going to fill that.
Doug, given how safe air travel is in the world, and the fact that your club has been personally impacted now by two tragedies, 1961 and 2025, does it strike you as bad luck, or what can you take away from that?
It strikes me as life. It's senseless, but accidents happen. I think for me personally, I'd rather have something like this happen in an accident than a terrorist activity or something, where somebody was deliberately trying to cause harm. It somehow makes it easier to accept that it was an accident.
How do you think that the club will remember the victims in the coming days?
Well, I don't think we're ever going to forget them. That is certain. How we commemorate them here, we haven't gotten to that point to discuss, but we certainly will. Just definitely very important and well-loved members of our community.
What went through your mind as you processed the initial information about the crash?
What went through my mind? It was, the biggest thing was, how can we get accurate information? At one point, we thought we had 12 skaters that were on, 12 skaters and their families. Then it was 8 to 10. And now, I mean, it sounds crazy to be relieved. Oh my gosh, it's only 6. But in some ways, I am relieved it's only 6. But it's a devastating 6.
I was wondering if you could, I know we spent time talking about the 2 skaters, but had you ever run into Molly? Had you ever run into Jen and kind of just talk about a little bit about them as well?
Yes, definitely. In Wichita, spent time with them. So dedicated moms, making sacrifices. The Lanes lived in Providence, or I should say Rhode Island, outside of Providence, spent a lot of time commuting, a real commitment to be here for Spencer to skate. As I said, Spencer was a pretty young phenom, has only been with the sport a couple of years and was just rocketing to the top. And his parents were working to support that. The Hahn family has been with us for a while, certainly since we opened this facility in September of 2020. And they are definitely a member of family. And I would say Jen, one of the most wonderful, pleasant, polite, smiling, just fantastic member of the club. Never a discouraging word, always appreciative, always supportive of not just Gina, her daughter, but every athlete. Just role model parents in youth sport. And you don't always get that, right? And I will say our kids compete hard on the ice against each other, but when they step off the ice, it's a pretty tight-knit group. The parents as well.
Were these kids also from Norwood or in the area?
Max was from Norwood. I forget the town where Gina and her mom lived, nearby.
And Spencer?
Spencer was Rhode Island.
Do they practice so much? Are they able to go to high school, or do they end up maybe doing some
They
other
do a mix of high school and homeschool. I believe Gina was homeschooled, and I believe Spencer was in school. Other questions?
Thank you so much.
What else should we know about this incident?
I don't know what to say to that. Information is still breaking. I mean, I think we've given you everything we know. It's obviously a very emotional thing for us because, as I said, they are like family to us. And the 2 dads remaining, I haven't spoken to them yet, but there's no doubt they're devastated. I know Max, obviously devastated, and skaters here at the club, senior level skaters, had all traveled to be with him last night as more information was breaking. I think if you look for a silver lining in something that's horrible, it's to see the humanity of how folks come together to support those that were directly affected by that. And that really is heartwarming and encouraging.
Sorry for your loss.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate, seriously, your interest in these families and these kids. Courtney is your point of contact moving forward. I'm available for whatever. Maybe as more information comes in, that sort of thing.
Jenya and Vadim, I assume you must have spoken to them many times.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Do you have any memory that really sticks out of the 2 of them or something about them?
Vadim, I would describe as an old school coach. I grew up in the St. Petersburg, Russia School of Skating, which produced many, many champions. I think he was a good role model for our kids here. Loved young kids, but he was also a firm disciplinarian, and not in a punishment way by any means, but in boundaries and training, and he made the kids keep to the proper standards. Very much in a Russian method, which, Russian method can be argued produces more champions because it is so strict. Great folks, great sense of humor. Jenya, if you don't know, pair skaters, the women in a pair team are incredibly tough. They have to look, like they're making it easy. They're getting chucked through the air. They're getting tossed up in the air. And their job is to land on one foot, make it look easy, always be pretty. but they are tough. And Jenya was incredibly resilient, and I think just a fabulous addition to this community. You couldn't see Jenya and not just break into a smile.
Have they known each other since they were children?
I think so, yes, training together, but I think their romance came later in life.
How did they end up here, and why did they end up here?
They were in a training camp in Connecticut, and we sought them out to build the coaching in our own program. That was a deliberate move, so we sort of stole them from Connecticut.
How tough was it to convince them?
It wasn't impossible, but we made it work for them. We made it work for them, and they've no regrets. I'm just going to miss them terribly.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Can I just follow up? You mentioned, that it's been a long road to build 3 zones. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? I mean, it's a long time ago. Rehiring coaches.
But when you have a situation where all the oxygen is sort of sucked out of the room, it gave the opportunity for the sport to develop elsewhere in the country. So Boston was no longer dominating the sport. Because our athletes passing away left room for other states.
Happy to help.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. You good?
You're good, man.
All right, thank you.
Also, the coaching was an important so that was sort of the rolling effect.
And you mentioned the longest tour. I can see it back to 19.
Thank you, Mark.
Can you kind of comment on
Sure. This club was founded in 1912. Founding member of U.S. figure skating from all southern countries. I would say this club is very proud of its tradition of one today, which is certainly we want to
United States is the safest form of travel of any of them, and it's the safest air travel in the world. And yet this horrific accident happened. And so there is real work to be done. As I said, I spoke with the chair of the NTSB. They are aggressively moving personnel from all over the country in order to start this investigation. We will support them with every ounce of capability that we have at the state level. Mayor Bowser has said the same thing, as has Governor Moore, and of course the President was monitoring all night. This will be a critically important investigation because this is a very busy area. It's been a busy area that has been safe, and what happened here is something that we must get to the bottom of to understand so it never happens again. Great, thank you. Okay, great.
Governor, I know you have a heart out. We're live here on Fox 5 DC. Could you at least address our viewers?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, what would you have to say to our Virginia families, our DC, Maryland families?
I ask everybody first to just stop for a moment and lift up all of these people who lost their lives and their families in prayer, and recognize that that is our first attention today. There is a massive now recovery effort in order to make sure that every lost life is accounted for and reunited with their families. We have families coming in from all over today to the harsh and shocking reality that they have lost a father or a mother or a sister or brother or even a child. And that is where our top priority has to be. There will be a very, very serious investigation. I spoke this morning with the chair of the NTSB, and she is mobilizing a national team. Many of them are already on site, and that work will begin. And I have pledged every ounce of resource that we have at the state level, and I know the mayor and Governor Moore have done the exact same thing, along with the White House, and they were deeply engaged all night into the rescue effort. And I also just want to thank our first responders. Never before has anyone seen the kind of response that was shown last night. The Coast Guard was on the scene immediately with vessels and people in the water. All of a sudden, first responders from all over Virginia and DC and Maryland arrived immediately, and they all went to work sacrificing their own safety in order to try to save others. This is what happens when we have an emergency in the DMV area. We go to work. And that's the work ahead of us, is to make sure that we understand what happened and that it never happens again.
And this really does go to speak to the importance of our state workers, our local workers, and our federal workers and our federal agencies to have expertise, knowledge, competence in times like this.
It does. One of the side stories is in addition to the heroism that was going on here at Reagan National in order to save lives. Meanwhile, 19 flights were diverted to Dulles. 19 flights that went to Dulles after Dulles was supposed to close, the metro was supposed to close. And by the way, American Airlines doesn't have operations at Dulles, and yet everyone put down all of that and welcomed passengers and helped them get to where they needed to get to. Metro stayed open late. And I just want to thank everyone who undertook that heroism in order to take care of other people in need. This is what we have to do as Virginians and Americans in a moment like this, is come together. I will say that this investigation is going to be critically important, and there are lots of questions. It was reported this morning that this was routine, that in fact there have been conversations with, of course, both crews, and that what was happening on the descent into the landing was not out of the ordinary, and yet clearly something happened. And that is what we have to find out next. But first today, we are very focused on making sure that there is a comprehensive recovery of every lost life, that families are reunited, and that we're doing everything we can to support them.
What have you been told about the local impact on families here in Virginia?
So we have not disclosed where the passengers are from yet, and I think that is in absolute respect of all that they are going through. I did speak with Bob Isom this morning early, and American Airlines is going through the just horrific process of calling families of their crew members and passengers. As of earlier today, they had spoken with a little more than half of the families, and they were just going through that very, very, very difficult process.
What are your office going to be doing to help them?
So we've pledged everything. NTSB takes the lead.
I said for the families, though.
Yeah, NTSB takes the lead in supporting the families as well. So their lead in supporting the families, along with American Airlines, and in the investigation. And as I said to the chairwoman this morning, whatever you need, we've got bereavement counselors, we've got housing and hotels. We will feed everybody. You tell us what you need, and we will do it. I just think this is the sentiment of the entire region and the nation. When the rare occurrence of a tragedy of this scale happens, and we've got to remind ourselves that this is when we demonstrate what it means to be a Virginian and American.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I did. I spoke with them last night, not with President Trump, but they were all in the Situation Room last night, and I spoke with a number of senior officials last night, and the engagement.
Okay, hold on. And here, Governor Duncan wrapping up. He does have a heart out, but let's see if we can listen in a little more.
The federal resources was so comprehensive.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, we got to get going. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so he did say that he did say that in response to a question that he had been speaking with the president, but again, just really nicely said in terms of what it means to be a Virginian, Marylander from the District of Columbia at a time like this, and importance of experience at the top. So we'll leave it
Audio check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Audio check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Check 1 1 1. Audio check 1 2 3 4. Audio check 1 2 3 4. Check 1 2. Audio check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Stop. Good. Good. I'm sorry. You guys asked some real personal questions now. We're going to get Jeremy to step in a minute to do the height measurements. He's closer to height. Okay. Mic check, mic check, mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check, mic check. Mic 1, mic 1. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2.
Hey, Albert, when
mic
you're out
check,
there,
mic
ask
check, mic
Albert
check,
a
mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. Mic check. Mic check, mic 2, mic 2. Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check.
And then she's gonna go to my camera, which will turn my light on. And I'll shoot her.
Mic check, mic check, mic check. Mic 3, mic 3. Mic check, mic check, mic check. Mic 3, mic 3.
You want to, and I can give you that iPhone.
Mic check, mic check. Mic 4, mic 4, mic 4, mic 4. Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mic check, mic check, mic 5, mic 5. Check 1, 2. Mic check. Final mic, check 1, 2. Final mic, check 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay.
Check 1, 2.
Yeah, no.
Cause more trouble. Some kind of hang loose thing that you're supposed to be applying.
And there's also photography.
lot of things that are supposed to be. Oh,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Test, test, test.
Sorry? Which aircraft? Like the one from last night? Yeah. Yeah. It's news. It's news. It was a cold one.
Yeah. What it is.
Yes. Yeah. So what I heard to be white hat. Yeah. Switching it up.
I liked it, but it was great.
Oh. Yeah, it's been.
That's what he does.
Yeah, Pamela, President Trump spent last night in the Situation Room with his team getting briefed as this crash happened just about 8:48 p.m. Eastern Time. He was being updated by officials throughout the night, posting regularly about the updates that they were getting. Remember, his transportation secretary had only been sworn in a few hours before this crash had happened. He was on the scene at Reagan National Airport last night and was spending several hours at the FAA headquarters here in Washington monitoring these developments as that search and rescue effort was underway that unfortunately did not find any survivors, as we are hearing from officials this morning. And so we are gathered here in the briefing room. This was just announced a few hours ago that we are expecting President Trump to come here to this briefing room any moments now. We are expecting top officials to join him here. We just saw the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth entering the White House grounds earlier today. Obviously, we heard an update from him this morning, given it was a Black Hawk helicopter that had 3 members of the U.S. military on board that collided with this American Airlines plane. Pete Hegseth said earlier that these were fairly experienced pilots who had been on this plane, 3 crew members in all that were on board, and a lot of questions as none of them have been identified yet, as we're waiting to hear an update on that, and also from the Transportation Secretary himself, potentially on the status of this investigation that is going to get underway, given this is the deadliest commercial airliner crash in the United States since 2001. And so that will be something that they will be launching an investigation, and we'll be waiting to see what that looks like.
Well, we're told that the president will be making remarks before he takes questions here, and there are going to be a lot of questions about what he had to say online last night. When he said that this could have been prevented, how did he know that so quickly when the NTSB investigation was not even underway at that point? Does he have information that is not available to the rest of us? The answer to that is surely yes. And so there will be a lot of questions about that, a lot of questions about the use of this airspace, why a training mission was taking place so close to the end of an active runway, whether it was necessary to conduct the training mission in that exact location, and with the new Secretary of Defense here as well, will there be changes going forward in the way that these training missions are planned and conducted?
Good morning.
Right.
Yeah, he put out a couple
There
of
is no
messages on social
confirmed
media,
FAA administrator at this moment, and so that's one of the questions that we'll be asking in this briefing today. Who exactly is in control of the FAA right now? Does the president have faith in them? Does he wish that the FAA director who stepped down on the day that he was sworn in, who had been criticized heavily by Elon Musk, does he wish that he would have encouraged him to stay on the job? And does he believe that there are enough FAA officials at a high level in place to handle what they're going to be dealing with over the next few days and weeks? And there will be so many questions coming up about congestion at Reagan National Airport, new flights being added there every year or two. Are there too many flights there? What's the situation with air traffic control staffing? Does that need to be addressed? Air traffic control training? All of these questions are going to come up. And so that, the president will be here, the Secretary of Transportation will be here after just being sworn in on Tuesday, Glad. So they're just getting to know the lay of the land. They're still trying to figure out their way around these agencies, just kind of get their bearings, and they're already being placed in this very difficult situation.
He was in North Carolina and California, sites of two significant natural disasters, and he was really there as consoler-in-chief, talking to people who had lost their homes or had their homes damaged, saying that he was with the people of North Carolina and also the people of California. Now, once again, just a week and a half into his presidency, he's being called on again to be a consoler-in-chief after this air tragedy. Yeah.
All right, Holland, stay here. What is a picture? What is that? Oh, selfie.
Showing up, he said his polls are
yeah, exactly. So what you're doing, I'm looking for that. I'll be looking for that on the wire, buddy.
Said that the aircraft were in theory in the right place, but they need to figure out what was happening and how it happened. Also, Pete Hegseth, the newly installed Defense Secretary, put out a video statement this morning. He talked about it as well because there was this Army helicopter involved. He said that the crew was fairly experienced and that they were on a required annual night evaluation and they did have night goggles. He said an investigation is being conducted to understand whether the aircraft was in the right quarter at the right altitude at the time of the incident.
on. Got it. Okay, thank you. Is it portable that makes it up in the report? Yeah. Whoops. Yeah. Hmm?
I'm sorry. Also straight. Also straight.
Okay. He told me not to. Okay, I'll call him back.
2-minute warning. We have a 2-minute warning.
2-minute warning. NBC, 2-minute warning. That's a 2-minute warning to the president.
Yeah. Yeah, and Michelle, I'll just note that about 90 seconds ago we got a 2-minute warning, so we are expecting to see the president here in the
NBC, that's a 2-minute warning.
pretty soon.
We have it.
Yeah,
1 minute.
I'm on your ID.
I will, yeah, so I will say that, you know, in a disaster, in a tragedy,
So I'm going to sit then, okay?
leaders rise above whatever else they might be arguing about or disagreeing over. You saw this out in California with the wildfires, even though there were dramatic disagreements about even the facts of why water was unavailable, you still saw the president and members of Congress from opposing parties agreeing that they wanted to work together and do everything they could to help the people who have been affected by those fires. And you have the same thing here, where there are multiple jurisdictions in what we call the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. government, the DC government, Virginia, Maryland, they were all involved in search and rescue efforts and ultimately now recovery efforts. And working together. You had senators from, Republican senators from Kansas at the same press conference as Democratic senators from Virginia. And so coming together around this. And we're expecting President Trump to come into this room and deliver a message to the American people as the President of the United States, the President for all Americans and Americans.
Sure, so we are expecting the President to walk out here to the briefing room at any moment now. It'll be his first time behind this podium since taking office for the second time. We anticipate he will be joined by others. The Secretary of Defense has arrived here at the White House as well. Back to you, Tony.
And the door is open. He's welcome in.
Mr. President, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to request a moment of silence for the victims and their families, please. Thank you very much. I speak to you this morning in an hour of anguish for our nation. Just before 9 p.m. last night, an American Airlines regional jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 military service members over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., while on final approach to Reagan National Airport. Both aircraft crashed instantly and were immediately submerged into the icy waters of the Potomac. Real tragedy. The massive search and rescue mission was underway throughout the night, leveraging every asset at our disposal, and I have to say the local, state, federal, military, including the United States Coast Guard in particular, they've done a phenomenal job. So quick, so fast, it was mobilized immediately. The work has now shifted to a recovery mission. Sadly, there are no survivors. This was a dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital and in our nation's history, and a tragedy of terrible proportions. As one nation, we grieve for every precious soul that has been taken from us so suddenly, and we are a country of we are in mourning. This is really shaken a lot of people, including people very sadly from other nations who were on the flight. For the family members back in Wichita, Kansas, here in Washington, D.C., and throughout the United States and in Russia, we have a Russia contingent, some very talented people, unfortunately, were on that plane. Very, very, very sorry about that. Whose loved ones were aboard the passenger jet. We can only begin to imagine the agony that you're all feeling. Nothing worse. On behalf of the First Lady, myself, and 340 million Americans, our hearts are shattered alongside yours, and our prayers are with you now and in the days to come. We'll be working very, very diligently in the days to come. We're here for you to wipe away the tears and to offer you our devotion, our love, and our support. There's great support. In moments like this, the differences between Americans fade to nothing compared to the bonds of affection and loyalty that unite us all, both as Americans and even as nations. We are one family, and today we are all heartbroken. We're all searching for answers. That icy, icy Potomac, it was a cold, cold night, cold water. We're all overcome with the grief for many who have so tragically perished, will no longer be with us. Together we take solace in the knowledge that their journey ended not in the cold waters of the Potomac, but in the warm embrace of a loving God. We do not know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now. because over the years I've watched as things like this happen, and they say, well, we're always investigating, and then the investigation 3 years later, they announce it. We think we have some pretty good ideas, but we'll find out how this disaster occurred, and we'll ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. The FAA and the NTSB and the U.S. military will be carrying out a systematic and comprehensive investigation. Our new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, his second day on the job when that happened. It's a rough one. We'll be working tirelessly. He's a great gentleman. The whole group these are great people, and they are working tirelessly to figure out exactly what happened. We will state certain opinions, however. I'm also immediately appointing an acting commissioner to the FAA, Christopher Rocheleau, a 22-year veteran of the agency, highly respected. Christopher, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We must have only the highest standards for those who work in our aviation system. I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary. You remember that. Only the highest aptitude, they have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for air traffic controllers. That was not so prior to getting there. When I arrived in 2016, I made that change very early on because I always felt this was a job that, and other jobs too, but this was a job that had to be superior intelligence, and we didn't really have that, and we had it. And then when I left office and Biden took over, he changed them back to lower than ever before. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen, because this was the lowest level. Their policy was horrible, and their politics was even worse. So as you know, last week, long before the crash, I signed an executive order restoring our highest standards for air traffic controllers and other important jobs throughout the country. So it was very interesting. About a week ago, almost upon entering office, I signed something last week that was an executive order, very powerful, on restoring the highest standards of air traffic controllers and others, by the way. Then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. They have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses. You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened, because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target, and you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring, the FAA's website states. They include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's Diversity and Inclusion Hiring Plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's Diversity and Inclusion Hiring Plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite. The FAA website shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit. The Department of Transportation, his government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. So I had to say that it's terrible. Then it's a group within the FAA, another story, determined that the workforce was too white, that they had concerted efforts to get the administration to change that and to change it immediately. This was in the Obama administration just prior to my getting there. And we took care of African Americans, Hispanic Americans. We took care of everybody at levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's one of the reasons I won. But they actually came out with a directive, too white. And we want the people that are competent. But now we mourn and we pray and would like to ask all Americans to join me in a moment of silence as we ask God to watch over those who have lost their lives and bring comfort to the loved ones. And I just want to say God bless everyone in this room. This has been a terrible, very short period of time. We'll get to the bottom of it. So we all saw the same thing. We've seen it many times. I've had the honor of hearing tapes. Tapes are scary, very scary tapes. You had a airliner coming in, American Airlines. He was doing everything right. He was on track. He was the same track as everybody else. They came in. It's probably the same track as they've had for 25 years or more. He's coming in the path. And for some reason, you had a helicopter that was at the same height, obviously when they hit, but pretty much the same height, and going at an angle that was unbelievably bad. When the air traffic controller said, do you see, he was talking about, do you see him? But there was very little time left when that was stated. And then also, he said, follow him in. And then almost immediately after that, seconds after that, there was the crash that took place. Well, you follow him in, that means like everything's fine, follow him in. You had a pilot problem from the standpoint of the helicopter, because it was visual. It was a very clear night. It was cold, but clear, and clear as you could be. The American Airlines plane had lights blazing. They had all of their landing lights on. I could see it from the Kennedy Center tape. We had a tape up on the Kennedy Center. That seems to be the primary thus far. I'm sure we'll see other tapes because it's such an area where there are a lot of cameras looking up into the air, into space. So we'll probably see many other shots of it before too much time goes by. But we had a situation where you had a helicopter that had the ability to stop. I have helicopters. You can stop a helicopter very quickly. It had the ability to go up or down. It had the ability to turn. And the turn it made was not the correct turn, obviously. It did somewhat the opposite of what it was told. We don't know that that would have been the difference because the timing was so tight. It was so little. There was so little time to think. But what you did have is you had vision. The helicopter had vision of the plane because you had vision of it all the way, perfect vision of it all the way from at Kennedy Center where the tape was taken. And for some reason, there weren't adjustments made. Again, you could have slowed down the helicopter substantially. You could have stopped the helicopter. You could have gone up. You could have gone down. You could have gone straight up, straight down. You could have turned. You could have done a million different maneuvers. For some reason, it just kept going and then made a slight turn at the very end, and by that time it was too late. They shouldn't have been at the same height, because if it was at the same height, you could have gone under it or over it, and nobody realized, or they didn't say that it's at the same height. At the same height, it still wouldn't have been great, but you would have missed it by quite a bit. Could have been 1,000 feet higher. It could have been 200 feet lower, but it was exactly at the same height, and somebody should have been able to point that out. So all of this is going to be studied, but it just seems to me, from a couple of words that I like to use, the words common sense, some really bad things happened, and some things happened that shouldn't have happened. So you had a helicopter going in an identical direction. You had a helicopter that was at the exact same height as somebody going in essentially the opposite direction. You had a plane that was following a track, which is a track that every other plane followed. And I don't imagine, I know I've heard today that they might have been following the preceding plane, which was pretty close, but not that close, the preceding plane. But you wouldn't have even been able to see that because of the direction that the helicopter was coming in at. So you had a confluence of bad decisions that were made, and you have people that lost their lives, violently lost their lives. We're going to take a few questions. I'd like to ask our new Secretary of Transportation to say a few words. Sean Duffy, great gentleman, just started. It's not your fault, and I know you agree with me very strongly on intellect and even psychological well-being of the air traffic control. It's such an important position, and I think I can't emphasize stronger. I changed it when I first ran in 2016. I changed it. We had the highest standard that you could have, and then they changed it back. That was Biden, to a standard I read it to you. That was from one of your papers. One of the people in this room actually wrote that. And then I changed it back a few days ago. And unfortunately, we'll see. We don't know that necessarily it's even the controller's fault. But one thing we do know, there was a lot of vision, and people should have been able to see that, at what point do you stop? At what point do you say, wow, that plane's getting a little bit close? So this is a tragedy that should not have happened. Please, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would just note the President's leadership has been remarkable during this crisis. We have had a whole of government response, local, state, federal, and when you see that kind of cooperation, it begins with the leadership in this body. So thank you for that, Mr. President. You make our jobs a lot easier. You made an important point that when we deal with safety, we can only accept the best and the brightest in positions of safety that impact the lives of our loved ones, our family members. And I think you make a really important point on that, Mr. President. That is the motto of your presidency, the best and the brightest, the most intelligent coming into these spaces. I want to take a moment and extend my condolences to the families of the loved ones. We commit to them that we are going to get to the bottom of this investigation, not in 3 years, not in 4 years, but as quickly as possible, with the NTSB, who is here today, as well as the FAA. What happened yesterday shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened. And when Americans take off in airplanes, they should expect to land at their destination. That didn't happen yesterday. That's unacceptable. And so we will not accept excuses. We will not accept passing the buck. We are going to take responsibility at the Department of Transportation and the FAA to make sure we have the reforms that have been dictated by President Trump in place to make sure that these mistakes do not happen again. And again, I want to thank you for your leadership, Mr. President, and I appreciate the confidence you placed in me. Thank you.
Pete, would you like to say something?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary said about your leadership. From the moment we found out about this, we were in contact with the White House trying to determine exactly what happened. I would echo it as well. No excuses. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We first and foremost, from the Defense Department, want to pass our condolences to the 64 souls and their families that were affected by this. Never should happen. And certainly the 3 service members, the 3 soldiers, a young captain, staff sergeant, and a CW2, Chief Warrant Officer, on a routine annual retraining of night flights on a standard corridor for a continuity of government mission. The military does dangerous things. It does routine things on the regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made. And I think the president is right. There was some sort of an elevation issue that we have immediately begun investigating at the DoD and Army level. Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top-tier aviation assets inside the DoD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable. But I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary and you, Mr. President, said, because it pertains to the DoD as well. We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government. So thank you for your leadership and courage on that, sir, and we'll stand by you on it. Thank you.
Very much. JD, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. I just want to reemphasize something the President said, and you've heard from the Secretary of Transportation and of Defense. There really was a whole of government response. We were all on the phone. We were all communicating yesterday, trying to get to the bottom of this immediately, but also try to communicate with the American people about what happened. Something the President said that I think bears reemphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means, on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C., is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control, and we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, on DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had 2 planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have. Yeah. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, you mentioned at the top of the briefing that there were several Russian nationals on the flight.
Yes.
Will the U.S. government be willing to facilitate the transfer of their remains, considering
Yes, we
the
will.
fact there is no direct air travel between the two countries?
We've already been in contact with Russia, and the answer is yes, we will facilitate. Yes. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is getting worse, even though President John Lorenzo has been mediating the conflict between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo because he wants to bring peace and stability. The situation is really bad right now. I want to hear from Ms. President if you have any plan in the future to bring peace in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
You're asking me a question about Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem, I agree, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to talk about it, but it is a very serious problem.
We even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people, you mean the names of the people that are on the plane? You think that's going to make a difference?
Does it comfort their families
They
to
are
hear you
a
blaming
group of
DEI
people that have
policies?
lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question.
But are you
I'm
blaming-
surprised coming from you.
Are you blaming
Please.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you for being here. Based on your analysis so far, do you have a sense of who was at fault, if it was the plane, the helicopter, air traffic control, and can you assure people that it is safe to fly in and out of D.C.?
Well, I've given you the analysis, and the analysis was it was based on vision. You had a lot of people that saw what was happening. You had some people that knew what was happening. There was some warnings, but the warnings were given very, very late. You know, those warnings were given very late. It was almost as they were given. A few seconds later, there was the crash. It should have been brought up earlier. But the people in the helicopter should have seen where they were going. I can't imagine people with 20/20 vision not seeing, you know, what's happening up there. Again, they shouldn't have been at the same height. You're going in reverse directions or sideways directions. Obviously, you want to be at different heights. I see it all the time when I'm flying. You have planes going in the opposite. They're always lower, we're higher, or so if somehow there's a screw up, there's not going to be a tragedy. It'll be close, but you know, there's never going to be a tragedy if you're at a different elevation. For whatever reason, they were at the same elevation. And also, from the American Airlines standard, he's along the track that every plane is along. You say, what was a helicopter doing in that track? It's very sad. But visually, somebody should have been able to see and taken that helicopter out of play, and they should have been at a different height.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned the Russians that were on board that plane. What other nationalities were on board that passenger
There
jet?
were a couple of others. We're going to be announcing it in about an hour. We have some very specific information. We're calling the countries. We've spoken to most of them, but there were some other countries represented.
Mr. President, have you spoken to President Putin?
I have not, no.
Mr. President, on your executive order,
Not about this.
on your executive order, you've already issued an executive order you say will restore aviation safety.
Right.
This crash happened after that. Was the executive order successful, and what more needs to change to keep people safe?
Well, you know, we issued it 3 days ago, and we're in the process of making those changes. This is something that should have been done a long time ago. Actually, my original order should have never been changed, and I think maybe you wouldn't have had this problem. Maybe. Yeah, please, go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you. We see like everyday life that very often those diversity hires cause sometimes issues, as you just mentioned. So what plan do you have? Are we going to see some fire? Are you going to fire some of those diversity hire in the federal government? What plan do you have?
I would say the answer is yes. If we find that people aren't mentally competent, you see the language. The language is put out by them. And if you see that, I'm not going to bore you by reading it again, but these are not people that should be doing this particular job. They'd be very good for certain jobs, but not people that should be doing this particular job.
Mr. President, you have today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistake. You then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60 planes coming in during a short period of time, and they're all coming in different directions, and you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have. But they didn't build the systems properly. They spent a lot of money renovating a system, spending much more money than they would have spent if they bought a new system for air traffic controllers, meaning the computerized systems. There are certain companies that do a very good job. They didn't use those companies. They used companies that should not have been doing it. No, I think it's very important to understand that for some jobs, and not only this, but air traffic controllers, they have to be at the highest level of genius. Okay.
I want to ask you about the ice skaters in a moment because the U.S. ice skating community was affected. But first, if I can, the cited FAA text that you read is real, but the implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's
Who said
website.
That, you?
No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the
Take
entirety.
a look, what I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration
Nice and
too.
easy.
So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first
I
administration?
did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in, and he changed it. And then when I came in 3 days ago, I signed a new order bringing it to the highest level of intelligence. Okay.
It was on the website.
Please. Quiet.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome
President.
back to the. I'm sorry.
You mentioned that a vision was probably the problem that was at issue in this crash. There's been some reports that one of the pilots in the helicopter may have been using night vision equipment. Was there any
I heard
indication?
that. We don't know. We're going to know that pretty soon. It may change your view plane if you do have the night vision. So it's very possible that could have happened. That would be maybe a reason why you wouldn't actually see as well as on a clear night. You can see sometimes better without it. I have a couple of more.
Mr. President, is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly?
Go to what?
Is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly as well?
Well, sure. We want fast confirmations. And the Democrats, as you know, are doing everything they can to delay them. They've taken too long. We're struggling to get very good people that everybody knows are going to be confirmed, but we're struggling to get them out faster. We want them out faster. It's a good question, actually. We've been pushing Sean. Everyone knows Sean for a long time. He got many, many Democrat votes, but they want to take as long as they can. They ask questions like some of the questions that Peter would ask that were totally irrelevant and not very good questions, but they want to just keep it going. They want to keep it going as long as possible. I was very honored, actually, that you got so many Democrat votes. That was really good. That was really good.
When I apply to meet with the families, and second question, is it your impression that military training that was done during that time?
The what?
The training that the helicopter was involved in. Is it anything you can tell us about
You
that?
don't know. These are the things that will come up with the investigation. You don't know. But the helicopter obviously was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a tragedy occurred. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've got a question about the...
No, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've been critical of the current regulations, and you've called for big reforms at FAA. I'm curious, sir,
I made the reforms, actually.
What is your message?
3 days ago, I made them.
Yes, sir. What is your message then to the American public in the weeks and months ahead? Should they feel hesitant to fly? And if you could clarify perhaps something that the Defense Secretary said when he said that this helicopter was on a continuity of government mission?
I don't know what that refers to, but they were practicing. They do that. They call it practicing, and and that's something that should be done. It's only continuity in the sense that we want to have very good people, and that has to be in continuity, and that's what they refer to. But it was basically practice, and it was a practice that worked out very, very badly. Okay.
On his question, the first question, should people be hesitant to fly right now?
No, not at all. I've not hesitated to fly. This is something that it's been many years that something like this has happened, and the collision is just something that we don't expect ever to happen again. We are going to have the highest level people. We've already hired some of the people that you've already hired for that position long before we knew about this. I mean, long before. From the time I came in, we started going out and getting the best people because I said it's not appropriate what they're doing. I think it's a tremendous mistake. You know, they like to do things and they like to take them too far, and this is sometimes what ends up happening. Now, with that, I'm not blaming the controller. I'm saying there are things that you could question, like the height of the helicopter, the height of the plane being at the same level and going in opposite directions. It's not a positive. But no, we're already hiring people. No, flying is very safe. We have the safest flying anywhere in the world, and we'll keep it that way. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much,
Lord God of all creation, for through your goodness we have received the bread we offer you, fruit of the earth and work of human hands. It will become for us the bread of life. Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, for through your goodness we have received the wine we offer you, fruit of the vine and work of human hands. It will become our spiritual drink. Humble spirit and contrite heart, may we be accepted by you, O Lord, and may our sacrifice in your sight this day be pleasing to you, Lord God. Wash me, O Lord, from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. Pray, brothers and sisters, that my sacrifice and yours may be acceptable to God, the Almighty Father. Look favorably on our offerings, O Lord,